Hey, this is Rich over at TVP Live with another quick tips tutorial brought to you by Adobe Photoshop Elements Independent Tutorials Group, and let's jump right in. In the last tutorial we showed you how to cut out an object, and in this tutorial we're going to talk about drop shadows or shadows in general. So we got our object that we had already cut out. If I turn off the background layer, you'll see that this is an object on its own that you could make a PNG out of. So in order to do shadows on the object, we had to previously cut the whole thing out of its background, and that's what we have here. In order to be able to see the background shadow, we're going to turn on the background white, pure white background. So we got our object here, and when we're talking about shadows, I'm talking about the two main different shadows that we can do here. There's probably others, but I'm going to talk about these two. One is a drop shadow, and one is an extruded shadow. The first one, the drop shadow, is going to show as if this was a flat image with its own shadow over a background. So I'm going to show you as an example first. The simple way to do this is once you got the object, it's really simple. You just right click, go down to Edit Layer Style. In the Edit Layer Style, it gives you lots of options, but we're talking about right here, drop shadow. The standard drop shadow comes down to the lower right angle, and that would be considered a 135 degree angle. Right now, the default of the light angle is at 30, so I'm going to make that 135, and you'll see that little bar here turned up to the 11 o'clock. And that means that's where the light is coming from. It's coming from up here and shining down this way, which would leave a shadow to the lower right, as most things are set to start with. You can put it wherever you want. Anyway, you choose the drop shadow right here, and you got three things: size, distance, and opacity. First thing to do is to take opacity all the way to the top. I'm going to move this over a little bit. And that will allow you to first see where the shadow is before you decide how much you want to lessen the opacity. Next, let's make the distance, and you're going to see it now. It's going to grow off the object in the direction that we had set this up here. And it's a hard shadow because the size here is making it hard. As we make the size bigger, it's going to soften more and more. But before we do that, I'm going to bring this down to here and show you what this angle does. If I grab the little bar here, which is representative of where the light is coming from, and as I turn the circle, you'll see that the shadow actually moves in a circle around the object, behind the object. And that's exactly what you're seeing. So I'm going to go back to approximately 135, right around there. And now we're going to play with the size. The size is going to soften the shadow, and you can see how it starts to look more realistic. I'm going to bring this distance a little bit closer so it looks more realistic. And there you go. It looks like, and the more you make it, the size bigger, the softer and the softer the shadow gets. This is a great tool for shadows coming off of larger objects like cars, behind a car or behind something big. But for this, let's say you're trying to sell this object and you want to show this as a three-dimensional object, then I would just soften it up like right around there, bring the distance back, and then take the opacity at the very end and lessen it to less is better. So not 0, not 100%, but somewhere in the middle. And I'm not looking at the number here. I'm looking at straight at the page, at the object, and I'm going to lessen it to where I think it looks natural. And that's going to be right around here. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit OK. I'll click out so you can look at the object. It looks like an object in front of a white background. The only problem with this is that it's not three-dimensional. It's more like a two-dimensional, as if this was a flat object with a light coming and you're seeing the flat shadow behind it. So there's another way to do this, and I'm going to go ahead and undo that by going back to right-clicking, going down to Edit Layer Style. I can turn off the drop shadow by declicking this right here. The other way is to duplicate the object, make the object all black, soften that duplicated version of it, and then extrude it using the image transforming tool. So let's do that. It's a little more involved, but it's not terribly difficult. But this will look a little more realistic as far as a three-dimensional object, as if this was really standing there with a background behind it. So I'm going to move the object back a little to give me space to extrude it. Next, I'm going to duplicate this this layer, but instead of hitting duplicate up here, I'm going to do it the simple way. by simply holding down the Alt button, left clicking the object, and just drag it over. And that makes an exact duplicate. That's a much easier way than having to go up here and do that. Now let's make your copy pure black. So I'm going to right click, go to the edit layer style, and I'm going to come down here to stroke, and then change the position from outside to inside. That will make the edge go in. The size, as I raise the size, you'll see the colors up on the top there. I can go back and forth. And since the legs were already black, there was nothing for it to close down on the edge of the stroke. But the more you see the top little layers that were white are turning black, that's thickening the edges of the line until it covers itself. Now we have a complete object that's completely black. I'm going to hit OK, and that's what we like. That's what we're looking for. Now I want to work with the next layer, which is our drop shadow. I'm going to bring it over here until it's right on top of the other one. Then you go up here to Image, Transform, and Distort. Distort is going to allow me to, and as you can see what I'm doing, I can grab the top edge and bring it anywhere I want. So if there was a light coming in from the upper left, you would have a shadow that is akin to something like this. And because I didn't grab the feet, you see that they stick to where they're supposed to be, down at the bottom here. All we have to do now is just soften this up simply by going over to the filter, come down to blur, and then choose a Gaussian blur. And as we bring it up slightly, little by little, it starts to get softer and softer. And that's basically all there is to it. We want to find something that's a nice natural looking shadow. And I kind of like it right around there. That's 23. I like round numbers, so I'm going to make it at 25 point. And that's pretty much it. I'll hit OK. And I'm going to squeeze it down a little bit to make it look a little more realistic. And then finally, all you have to do is go up to opacity. And now we can lessen it to make it look really realistic. I'm going to lessen it to almost nothing and then bring it up just a tiny bit. And now it really looks like a three-dimensional. Here, I'm going to set this to 50% opacity and then squeeze it even more. It really looks like a three-dimensional shadow coming off of the object if the lamp was over here. And that's all there is to it for this tutorial. This is Rich calling it quits for this one, and we're saying over and out. Bye.